Welcome back to school, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas break. I missed you guys. I know you missed me too. Uh, don't cry. Obviously, don't hug me. That would be really, really creepy. I'll give you a high five, maybe, if I'm feeling in a good mood, if you're lucky. If not, then I guess we'll just have to do notes and move on. But, whatever. I might be in a good mood tomorrow. Who knows? I'm going to be in a good mood. I'm always in a good mood. We're going to talk about cell division. So, cell division is going to be our conversation of topic when we get back into the swing of things. And we're going to watch this short video and we're going to write 5 facts on it. 5 facts on this video. All right. Now that you finish writing down those 5 facts, make sure you label them 5 facts of the first video, so that way when I look at your notes later for points, yup, easy points for the beginning of the year, holla at your boy. We're going to count the facts, 1 through 5, obviously, put it on there. Now, you're going to continue taking notes on the rest of the slides that are presented to you in the rest of this video. So we're going to start with, oh, that's a great face. I'm super glad that's the face we get to see when we turn to this slide. Ha! It's my brother. No, it's not my brother. But if he was, you could imagine that we'd have some pretty fun talks. So we're going to talk about asexual reproduction versus sexual reproduction.
Okay, correction. Have you ever wondered why there is sex? I mean, I'm sure that your parents went over the basics with you when you were 11, or maybe you learned it from that, bossy girl at the public swimming pool. But no matter where you learned it, the gist is probably the same. We have sex so that we can have more people. Same goes for grasshoppers and pandas and poppies. Sexual reproduction exists to make new animals, right? But some animals totally abstain from the sex, and they still get the job done making babies all day long all by themselves. If it's possible for some animals to reproduce without having sex, why doesn't everybody just do it that way? You know that something's up when the majority of all animals reproduce sexually, at least some of the time. Some biologists have calculated that 99% of plants, animals, fungi, and protists have sexual reproduction at least some of the time. And some animals, like starfishes and slugs and strawberries, they can do either, depending on how they're feeling that day. So sexual reproduction, that just means that two organisms of the same species get together and combine their genetic material to create a new organism that's genetically a little bit different from both of them. Included in this category are you and me, and all of the pandas and grasshoppers and poppies. Asexual reproduction doesn't rely on mixing anybody's genetic material. Basically, it lets you make a baby whenever you feel like it, creating a genetic clone of yourself. And this can happen in a number of different ways. Binary fission, which a bunch of bacteria and protists and unicellular fungi do. This is when an organism just splits in half and the halves go about their business until they're mature enough to split in half again. Budding, which is what hydras do. They make little buds that pop off of the mom hydra when they get big enough. Organisms can also reproduce vegetatively through bulbs or tubers or rhizomes. And now for parthenogenesis. This little girl here is a New Mexican whiptail lizard, and I know that she's a girl because they are all girls. Parthenogenesis literally means virgin birth. These whiptail lizard ladies can form embryos inside of themselves without being fertilized by a male, which is good because there are no males. It's more common in arthropods, but as larger animals go, lizards seem to have the knack of it. There's also fragmentation, where a parent can break into a bunch of different pieces, each of which can then produce its own offspring, and I could go on and on. So on the surface of things, making these quick and easy copies of yourself seems to be a pretty good way to go. I mean, sex is awesome at everything, but it isn't particularly convenient. First, you have to find a suitable mate, which, we've all had our troubles with. And then you're stuck with only half of your population being able to give birth, the other half just being useless. And generally, sexual reproduction happens on a slower time scale. By the time sexual reproduction results in one round of offspring, asexual reproduction has had 3 generations, and they're all off in the world making friends and influencing people. And yet still, sex is a thing. It's a very popular thing. It turns out that combining the genes of 2 different members of the same species is worth all that time and effort. The key here is that gene variation makes a population of organisms less susceptible to disease and more able to survive if conditions get crappy. When times get tough, the population is genetically diverse enough that at least some members will survive. And say a population is all but wiped out, sexual reproduction allows for a genetically diverse population to be rebuilt from a relatively small number of individuals. And then there is the Red Queen's hypothesis, named after the Red Queen in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, who said it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. The idea here is that a species needs to constantly adapt in order to keep up with predators and parasites and competitors. Studies have shown that snails and worms that reproduce sexually are way better at resisting infestations than snails and worms that reproduce asexually. It's basically an arms race, and sexual reproduction and the genetic variation that it provides is the only way to keep up. And finally, possibly the best reason for sex is the same reason that we don't tend to mate with our family members. Organisms that reproduce asexually rely on genetic mutations for all of the genetic variation within their population. But most of the time, when genes mutate, the result is a bad thing for the population. So after many generations of cloned organisms, the bad genetic mutations tend to pile up, and they can actually wipe out entire populations. Which is why lots of organisms that reproduce asexually when conditions are great reserve the right to sometimes reproduce sexually if conditions get worse. So there you have it. Asexual reproduction seems like a great idea, but in the end, sex rules. For more information on sexual and asexual reproduction, see our citations in the description. If you have questions or suggestions, you can ask us on Facebook or Twitter, or of course, in the YouTube comments below. Use a condom, or birth control, or both.
All right, so asexual means one individual reproduces or produces offspring that are actually just identical to itself. So where you got no difference. That'd be like having two Mr. Moores, which would be awesome. It would make for a phenomenal. I would just not come to work. I would send my clone to work for sure, all the time. He probably wouldn't be nearly as cool as me, or he would be cooler. But either way, I would be able to sleep more, and it would be awesome. So you guys might not like that, though. Could you imagine if we were both here at the same time? That'd be crazy. Sexual reproduction is where two individuals produce offspring that have genetic characteristics from both parents. So basically what we're saying is like you're an individual. So when you go through sexual reproduction, you're creating a completely brand new individual with a combination of two different individuals' genes coming in. Sexual reproduction is definitely better because it causes more genetic diversity. If I were to, be sick and die from something, if we all had the exact same genes, we would all get sick and we would all die. None of us would make it. But because we all have different genes, if I got sick and died from something, those of you that are clapping right now, you just lost all your points for today. Don't get excited because Mr. Moore's not going to die today. Maybe. I don't know. But make sure that this genetic diversity makes sure that some of the organisms will live on instead of all of us dying from one little disease. So this one is going to talk about mitosis. This video, I'm going to mute it because it's actually really boring, but it's the process of mitosis. I said I was going to mute it. I'm
Mitosis
not.
begins
Not.
as the long threads of DNA in the nucleus start to coil. Having already replicated, these threads emerge as the double strands we know as chromosomes.
Chromosomes. It's important.
Meanwhile, protein fibers grow from the migrating centrioles, forming a latticework of spindles. For reasons scientists don't fully understand, the nuclear membrane suddenly disintegrates. With amazing accuracy, a spindle from each centriole attaches itself to each of the chromosomes. Assisted by the protein fibers, the chromosomes move center stage. In a microscopic tug of war, the spindles pull each chromatid toward opposite poles.
It's an
Other
underrated
spindles
sound.
push against each other in a ratcheting action that stretches the cell. The chromosomes then unwind, and the nuclear membranes reform.
Perfect. That's the end of it. We're going to stop there. So we turn it into two identical daughter cells. Here's an example. A cell has 46 chromosomes. This is in a human. And produces cells with 46 chromosomes. We're getting the same number of chromosomes when we go through mitosis. Okay? As you'll find out momentarily, you will find out that meiosis is not the same, or meiosis as it's called, but I say meiosis, so we remember that they're not the same. They're different, right? I'm different. So diploid is actually going to get its own slide because it's that cool. So let's talk about it. Diploid number. So to get a diploid number, you have to have two sets of chromosomes. The number of chromosomes in a cell, and the only haploid numbers that we see here, haploid are only sex cells. Sex cells are the only thing in your body that are haploid. So if you're male, sperm cells are haploid. If you're female, your egg cells are haploid. The rest of the cells in your body are diploid. That's the number of chromosomes in your cells. That means you have two full sets of genes from mom, two full sets of genes from dad. You get hair color, eye color, skin color, both from mom and dad. It's just that the combination of the two creates who you are. When an egg is fertilized by a sperm, it then is returned to the diploid number. So that is why I say haploid plus haploid in this picture, as you can see right here. Haploid plus haploid is going to give us diploid, okay? That is what happens. So if this one over here is, we'll say it's blue for boy, is our sperm, we add that to our egg, which is, I mean, it's red, but we'll call it pink, and we get a diploid number. That's a new offspring, okay? Now this is meiosis. This one's also relatively boring. However, you got to stay engaged as best as you can.
The cell prepares for meiosis just as it does for mitosis. But as the DNA condenses, each chromosome finds its homologous counterpart. These matching pairs of chromosomes hold equivalent genetic information, one set from mother and one from father. Next comes the first shuffle of nature's genetic deck. The two homologs trade genes in a process called crossing over. This forms new hybrid chromosomes. The spindles then place maternal and paternal chromosomes randomly on each side of midline. It is another shuffle that can lead to a host of different genetic outcomes. Finally, spindle fibers pull the homologs apart. This leaves the sister chromatids intact. With twice the amount of genetic information the cells will need, nature must cut the genetic deck in two. The second division produces 4 unique sets of chromosomes.
Or different. Unique is different.
Because they carry half the genetic information, we call these haploid cells. Many of them will mature into sperm and eggs, the reproductive cells called gametes.
Gametes. All right. So, results in 4 new cells, which are all genetically different from one another. We just talked about that. Punch yourself. New cells have half the number of chromosomes as the parent cells, so we start with 46 in humans. Each one of these cells that we see finished here on this side would have 23. Example, if you start with 46, then it will end with 23. Oh my gosh, Mr. Moore, are you psychic? Huh. I should be reading your future instead of telling you about biology. That's what I should be doing. I got it right, though. I can divide by 2. So good. All right. And this is a form of sexual reproduction. If we don't have haploid cells, we cannot reproduce sexually because humans are 46 chromosomes. If we don't have haploid cells and we only have diploid cells, 46 plus 46 gives us 92. And if I think I'm as good at math as I think I am, 92 does not equal 46. That would not be a human being. These are used to produce gametes. We just talked about that. Man, we're good at this stuff, guys. Main stages of cell division. There are 2 main stages. This is mitosis, is the division of the actual, it says division of cells, but it's actually just the division of the nucleus into 2 separate nucleus. Mitosis actually is going to go ahead and end right here in this picture. Mitosis ends right there. And then our next stage is called cytokinesis. Cytokinesis is the division of the cytoplasm. In plants, you're going to get cell plates to form, which then create a cell wall. So if you see right here, I'm going to change the pen color because why not? I can because it's, why not? This is where cytokinesis occurs. And then we have 1 cell right here and then 2 cells right there, and that's what you see over here in this picture. You start with this one, they get pulled apart, and then we have 2 cells. Cool? Cool. Differentiation is basically you start with the same cell, and then it changes or specializes through differentiation. Oops, let's go back to that slide just for a moment. Oops. All right. So with that being said, all of you start out as a single cell, and then cells differentiate. So you get skin cells, muscle cells, eye cells, blood cells, veins, heart cells, stomach cells, whatever it is, you get different types of cells. That's what cell differentiation is. That's the point of cell differentiation, because as you know, we can't function on just heart cells. We have to have brain cells too. We can't function on just brain cells. We have to have stomach cells too, because brain cells can't digest food. Stomach cells can't pump blood through your body, and heart cells can't think for you. So you have to have a combination of all of those to be a successful living organism. Stem cells, same picture, I know, but I use the same picture because stem cells are where cell differentiation begins, because stem cells are the only cells in your body that can develop into any type of cell. So you can't take a skin cell that we have on our face or on our neck or back or wherever we decide to take the skin cell from and turn it into a heart cell. It's already designated as a skin cell. It can only stay a skin cell. However, a stem cell can change into a liver cell, a blood cell, a muscle cell, any kind of cell that you can imagine being inside of your body. It can change into that cell. So that's why they are so important. All right, as you just saw, this is the end of the slideshow. Make sure that you have your notes completed. Bring them up to Mr. Moore so that he can put them in the grade book. Good luck and Godspeed.